Hey nerds, welcome back to the channel. If you clicked on this video because you're looking for a fragrance that's nice, practical, and cheap that everyone will love, you're gonna have a bad time. The fragrances that we're gonna talk about today are really weird, but weird in the best way. Since the dawn of time, people romanticized locations. Everyone in the world now apparently wears a New York Yankees hat or a LA Dodgers hat, thinking it's referring to a location. So all the baseball nerds are pissed about it. Bro, that's not what it means. Bro, who's your favorite player from the Yankees? Bro. No one should get that angry for throwing balls. And I do think it's the responsibility of a consumer to at least try to understand the context of what they're wearing. If not, you're just copying others, right? But I'm okay with it. You know, it's a trend, it's a fashion. Anyways, the point is people glamorize and fantasize about certain locations in the world. And today we'll be looking at Marfa, which is a small city or town located in Texas of the United States. Two of my favorite brands that I can't afford dedicated fragrances to this specific location. Memo Paris Marfa and Durga El Cosmico are both fragrances that have been inspired by this very location. Now, I've never been to Marfa. I did pass through a nearby location when I was traveling, so I do understand the geography, so I understand the vibe. I know two things about Marfa. One, I know Donald Judd, the artist, moved to Marfa from New York City, founded the Judd Foundation there. So they have a very prominent minimalist art scene there. Two, the infamous Prada Marfa installation art that people actually think it's a Prada store. But do these fragrances actually smell good? And are they loyal and faithful to the location they're inspired by? The other reason I decided to do this video, despite the fact that this is such a niche topic that no one's gonna watch this video, because you know, I make terrible decisions for my channel. Yeah, I try everything I can to get less subscribers. Anyways, the reason I did it is that El Cosmico and Marfa, despite the fact that they're not the most popular fragrances from both of these brands, have what I consider the fragrance DNA that makes Memo Paris and Durga. There's something in these fragrances that is reoccurring in all of their fragrances, and I think it's so fascinating. Let's talk about El Cosmico first because I gotta get this off my chest. Durga is my favorite brand. I can't afford them, and I don't have a lot of them because I can't afford them, but as a brand, they're my favorite. This smells like Band-Aids. Yes, you heard me correctly. This smells like Band-Aids. I love Band-Aid. I thought long and hard why I thought this smelled like Band-Aids, and I finally figured out why. And I can't stop smelling it because I'm a pervert. Band-Aid. So this Band-Aid smell, I realize, is the reoccurring trait in a lot of Durga fragrances. And that is its medicinal smell. I call it the turpentine smell. A lot of Durga fragrances have this vibe. Amber Kiso has it. Bowmakers, Mississippi Medicine, Burning Barbershop, Free Trapper, they all have this similar vibe. I think most of their woody fragrances have this vibe. And I did some research on the notes and it makes complete sense why it smells like Band-Aids. This medicinal smell has almost like a mentally smell in the beginning. I can describe it as a sweet pine smell, but it's immediately hit by what is called Kella and creosote bush. And I do know creosote bush is pretty prominent. It grows a lot in that southwest desert Texas area. Turns out both of these ingredients are actually used as for medicinal purposes. They have this green, herbal, antiseptic, and camphorous smell. It's soft, dry, and surprisingly creamy. And this is where it gets a little abstract and more visceral. This fragrance really opens up your lungs. And let me describe what that means. Have you ever been camping outdoors in the desert? The air, you can only imagine that the air hits you differently. It's kind of like that. There's also this woody smokiness in this that reminds you of the nighttime in a desert where you have a campfire. And this is honestly why I love this brand so much and why I think Durga is sort of like the epitome of a niche house, because they don't necessarily pursue what smells good. They have a very specific purpose. They want to evoke a memory or a specific location in mind, and this does exactly that. And Memo honestly aims to do that too, as the name implies, memory memo. So this is a amazing outdoor smell. You feel like you're at a desert camping, and you smell all these things that are prominent in that location. As I said, creosote bush and all these vegetation and the sand and the dry air. It's an experience, and I really like this fragrance for what it is. It smells like nighttime desert or Band-Aid, depending on what you think. It's really up to you. On the other hand, Marfa by Memo Paris had a very different vision of what they consider Marfa. Now, I'll be honest, I love Memo. I really love Memo. I think their leather line is some of the best leather I've ever smelled in my, my fragrance hobby journey. And Sintra is probably my favorite orange blossom fragrance of all time. But I do not understand why this is called Marfa. Speaking of Sintra, this one kind of smells like a watered down Sintra. And that's not to say it's soft, it's pretty strong, to the point where you should probably be careful how much you put on during summer, despite the fact that it's fresh floral. And once again, the reason I appreciate this fragrance, despite the fact that I personally, it's not my cup of tea, is that there is something in this that is a reoccurring DNA scent profile in other Memo Paris fragrances. It can be found in, at least, in my limited experience, Sintra, Winter Palace definitely has this vibe as well, Sundance, and amongst others. And you know what it is? It's the white floral smell. In this case, tuberose, and it's very strong. To be honest, if I spray this one too much, I actually do get a headache. So once again, be careful on the trigger. And as I said, I love this brand, but the florals are surprisingly the harder ones to recommend compared to even the leather ones. Leathers are traditionally more divisive, but they're actually way more approachable in my opinion compared to the florals. Marfa is all about the orange blossom and tuberose. To me, this is a fragrance that provokes more of a lifestyle that might be found there rather than the environment. To understand this context, you gotta remind yourself that Donald Judge, who's a famous artist, moved to Marfa from New York City, and that's actually one of the biggest reasons why this city became famous and became a tourist destination, because he founded this institution called the Judd Foundation. There's a lot of galleries there that showcase minimalist art. To briefly elaborate on that, the way I see his work, the reason why I think it works in Marfa compared to New York City is because he makes this minimalist work, which by the way, he hated using that word, in this isolated, desolate place, this desert, and it's just there. Compared to New York, where it's just surrounded by so many objects and components. So by placing this in the middle of nowhere, you're sort of accentuating and elevating the value of this object. It's accentuating the minimalistic appeal. And that is sort of how I see Marfa by Memo Paris. It's a very expensive brand. I can't stress this enough. I really wish they were cheaper because I think a lot of people will like them more if they weren't ridiculously expensive. But I guess one can argue that's sort of their merit. It's like this really pristine, really expensive minimalistic bottle. There's this bronze art in the front. It's very precious. And now it's located itself in this middle of nowhere in Texas. And the scent itself is very minimalistic and linear. I feel like a lot of brands do this. They just name it the way they want and say they were inspired by it. And I sense a detachment, honestly, from the naming and the fragrance itself. The fragrance itself is lovely. Honestly, it's beautiful. I can imagine beautiful people smelling like this in the middle of a city. While Durga El Cosmico, I feel like they actually studied the environment and its focus was to evoke the atmosphere of that habitat. So if I had to go head to head with these two fragrances, honestly, I would go for Durga El Cosmico because it was more loyal to the name itself. But is this a beautiful fragrance? Absolutely. After a certain point of indulging in this hobby, it's no longer about smelling good so that I can be impressing other people, but it's more about, dissecting these experiences as like an art form. And I really enjoyed these two fragrances and enjoyed comparing these two, not because I think one was worse than the other, but just to understand the perfumer's perspective on the subject matter. Anyways, did you guys ever smell these fragrances? Are you familiar with Marfa region? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!